I used to believe my marriage was steady, predictable, almost comforting in its routine. Every evening he would come home around the same time, loosen his tie, and tell me about his day while I prepared dinner. Nothing dramatic, nothing exciting, just quiet consistency. But lately, something had started to change, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. At first, it was small things. He would text saying he'd be late because of work, and I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He had always been responsible, always honest. But then the late nights became more frequent, and his explanations felt shorter, less detailed, almost rehearsed. I noticed the way he avoided eye contact when he walked through the door, how he went straight to the shower without saying much. Even his voice sounded distant, like he was somewhere else entirely. I tried to tell myself I was overthinking, that stress could change people, that marriages go through phases. Still, there was this quiet discomfort sitting in my chest, growing heavier each night. And no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, one thought kept returning, refusing to leave me alone. I started noticing inconsistencies in his stories, small details that didn't match the day before, tiny gaps that shouldn't exist. That was when doubt stopped whispering and began settling inside me like something permanent. At first, I tried to ignore the feeling, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. Marriage requires trust, and I didn't want to be the kind of person who questioned everything. But the late nights didn't stop. If anything, they became part of a new routine I never agreed to. He started coming home later than usual, sometimes past midnight, always with a different explanation. One night it was an emergency meeting. The next it was a colleague needing help, then traffic, then overtime. Each excuse sounded reasonable on its own, but together they felt carefully constructed, like pieces of a story that didn't quite belong. I began noticing other changes too. His phone, once left casually on the table, was now always with him. If it buzzed, he would glance at it quickly, then turn the screen away. Once I walked into the room unexpectedly and saw him texting. He locked the phone almost instantly, offering a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. The man I knew used to talk to me about everything, even the smallest details of his day. Now, conversations felt short, almost mechanical. I would ask how work was, and he would respond with a single sentence before changing the subject. It felt like I was speaking to someone who was physically present, but emotionally somewhere far away. One night, something happened that I couldn't ignore. His phone rang while he was in the shower. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the sound echoed through the quiet house, impossible to miss. I glanced at the screen and saw a name I didn't recognize. Before I could think, I picked it up, but the call ended before I could answer. When he came out, I mentioned it casually, trying to sound normal. He froze for just a second before brushing it off, saying it was probably a wrong number. But his reaction stayed with me. It wasn't what he said. It was how quickly he dismissed it, how carefully he avoided any detail. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my mind. I questioned myself, wondering if I was imagining things, if stress had made me overly sensitive. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The doubt I had been trying to suppress was no longer quiet. It had grown into something stronger, something impossible to ignore. And for the first time, I realized that trusting him blindly might be the biggest mistake I was making. The thought stayed with me for days, growing louder each time he walked through the door with another excuse. I tried to push it away, tried to hold on to the version of him I believed in, but something inside me had already shifted. Trust doesn't break all at once. It cracks slowly, quietly, until one day you realize there's nothing solid left to stand on. That night, when he said he would be working late again, I didn't argue. I didn't question him. I just nodded. forcing a small smile as if everything was normal. But inside, I had already made my decision. I needed to know the truth, no matter how much it might hurt. I waited until he left the house. I gave it a few minutes, just enough time so it wouldn't seem obvious, then grabbed my keys. My hands were shaking, and for a moment, I hesitated. Following him felt wrong, like I was crossing a line I could never come back from. But staying in the dark felt worse. I got into my car and started the engine, my heart beating faster than I could control. I kept a distance as I followed him, careful not to get too close. Every turn he took made my chest tighten. This was no longer just suspicion. This was real. At first, the route made sense. It was the same direction he usually took toward his workplace. For a brief moment, I almost felt foolish, like I had let my imagination run too far. But then, he made a turn I had never seen him take before. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. He kept driving, further away from the main roads, into an area I didn't recognize. The streets became quieter, the buildings more residential. This wasn't where his office was. This wasn't even close. A wave of panic hit me, but I didn't stop. I followed him through a few more turns until he finally slowed down and pulled over in front of a house. It wasn't large or luxurious, just a simple, quiet place with soft lights glowing from the windows. Everything about it felt normal. That was what made it worse. I parked a short distance away, my heart pounding so loudly it felt like it might give me away. I watched as he stepped out of the car, looking around briefly before walking toward the front door like he had done it 100 times before. That detail didn't escape me. This wasn't new. He knocked once, and within seconds, the door opened. I leaned forward slightly, trying to see more clearly. My breath caught somewhere between fear and disbelief. A woman stood at the doorway. She didn't look surprised to see him. In fact, her expression softened the moment she saw his face, like she had been waiting. I felt something inside me drop, something heavy and final. But I didn't move. I couldn't, because deep down I knew I hadn't seen everything yet, and whatever was about to happen next would change everything I thought I knew about my life. I stayed in the car, frozen, watching what unfolded in front of me. He stepped inside like he belonged there, like this was part of his everyday life. The woman smiled at him, stepping aside to let him in, and for a moment I told myself there had to be some explanation. Then I saw it. A small child ran into the hallway, laughing, calling out, "Dad!" The word echoed in my head, louder than anything else in that moment. My chest tightened so hard it hurt, like I couldn't breathe properly anymore. He bent down and picked the child up effortlessly, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. It wasn't forced or distant. It was natural, warm, real. That was when the truth hit me. This wasn't something new. This wasn't a mistake or a one-time betrayal. This was a life he had built somewhere else, carefully hidden behind late nights and half-finished excuses. I watched as he walked further into the house, completely comfortable, like he knew exactly where everything was. The woman followed him closely, her hand brushing against his arm in a way that felt intimate, familiar.
Nothing about this looked new. Nothing about this looked like a secret he had just started keeping. It looked like a second life that had been running parallel to ours for a long time. Tears blurred my vision, but I couldn't look away. Every small detail felt like another piece of something breaking inside me. The way the child clung to him. The way the woman spoke softly as they moved deeper inside. This was real. And the worst part was the realization that he had been living this reality while coming home to me like nothing was wrong. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to steady myself, but nothing could prepare me for what I had just seen. The man I trusted, the life I believed in, it all felt like a lie now. And as I sat there in silence, One question repeated itself over and over again in my mind. How long had this been happening? The thought alone made my stomach turn, because every memory I held suddenly felt uncertain, like it could be rewritten with a truth I had never known. I tried to remember the exact moment things started changing, but now it all blended together into something I could no longer trust. I realized then that I couldn't stay there forever, watching a life that was never meant for me to see. But moving felt impossible, like my body had forgotten how to function. Still, I knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. After what I witnessed, I didn't confront him that night. I couldn't. I drove home in silence, my mind replaying everything I had seen, over and over again, like it was trying to force me to accept something I wasn't ready to understand. When he finally came back, hours later, I pretended to be asleep. I listened to the quiet way he moved through the room, the same familiar routine, as if nothing had happened. But everything had. The next morning, I was calm. Too calm. It wasn't anger anymore. It was something deeper, something colder. I made breakfast like I always did, waited until he sat down, and then I looked at him properly for the first time in days. "We need to talk," I said. He froze. Just for a second. But that was enough. At first, he tried to act confused, asking what I meant, pretending everything was normal. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse him wildly. I just told him where he went the night before. I told him what I saw. And just like that, the lies stopped. His face changed, the confidence draining out of him as reality settled in. He tried to explain, but the words didn't come easily. When they finally did, they felt empty, like excuses he had repeated too many times in his own head. "It's not what you think," he said. But it was exactly what I thought. He admitted it slowly, piece by piece, like dragging the truth out was somehow easier than facing it all at once. The other woman wasn't new. Neither was the child. This had been going on for years. Years of shared time, shared moments, shared life that I knew nothing about. I listened without interrupting. That was the part that seemed to affect him the most. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't crying. I was just done. When he finished, the room felt unbearably quiet. "I trusted you," I said finally. He tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. In that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about me. About what I was willing to accept and what I wasn't. So I made my decision. I walked away. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with clarity. Because sometimes, the strongest thing you can do isn't to fight for something broken. It's to let it go and choose yourself instead.